Somewhere in an editing bay, there is roughly 30 minutes of Ryan Gosling floating around a spaceship, alone, doing nothing in particular. That footage exists. It was shot. It was edited. And then it was thrown out. Today we're talking about why, and about the fact that a chunk of it is finally coming back. If you've seen Project Hail Mary, you know the film that made it to theaters. What most people don't know is that the version that almost got released was, according to the people who made it, more than double the length. So let's talk about the movie that didn't make the cut, why 5 scenes are finally surfacing this August, and what that says about how this film got made in the first place. Now here's the news part, quick and clean. Project Hail Mary is heading to 4K Ultra HD, Blu-ray, and DVD on August 11th. That release comes packed with 3 bonus features. A commentary track from directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. A featurette called Earth's Favorite Iridian, focused on the alien character Rocky, and 5 deleted scenes. 5 scenes doesn't sound like much on its own. But context is everything here, and the context is wild. This film was originally cut together at more than double its final theatrical runtime. The version audiences saw in March ran about 2 hours and 36 minutes. Do the math on that, and you're looking at an original assembly pushing 5 hours long. Nobody was ever going to release a 5-hour space movie in wide theatrical release, so the question was never whether to cut. It was what to cut, and how much of it we'd ever get to see. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting from a filmmaking standpoint. In an interview with Cinema Blend, Lord and Miller said there was about half an hour of footage that they described as Ryan Gosling's character just killing time and space. Not filler for the sake of filler. This is a movie about a man alone on a spacecraft for a huge stretch of the story, and the source novel leans heavily into that isolation through internal monologue. You can write pages of a character thinking. You cannot film 30 pages of a character thinking and expect an audience to sit still for it. So the directors apparently shot a lot of that solitude. Real-time passing, small routines, the mundane texture of survival in deep space. And then, in the edit, they realized most of it didn't need to exist for the story to work. It needed to exist for the shoot, maybe for performance, maybe for tone setting, but not for the final cut. That's not a failure. That's just how filmmaking works when you're adapting a 496-page novel that spends enormous amounts of time inside one character's head. This is honestly one of the more underrated challenges in adaptation. Andy Weir's book works because you're trapped in Ryland Grace's thought process for chapters at a time. Film doesn't have that luxury. A camera can't show internal monologue the way a page can. So screenwriter Drew Goddard and the directing team had to find visual and structural substitutes for something the book did purely through prose. And that meant a lot of material had to go, even material that was well shot and well performed. Now, specifics. As of this recording, the studio hasn't detailed exactly which 5 scenes made the cut for the home release. And that's honestly smart marketing. It keeps people curious right up until the disc drops. But given what we know about the shoot, there are a few reasonable expectations worth flagging. Given the emphasis on Rocky in the separate featurette, it's likely at least 1 or 2 of the deleted scenes deepen the relationship between Grace and Rocky beyond what made the final runtime. That relationship is the emotional spine of the whole film, and it's also the thing critics and audiences responded to most. If there was more of it on the cutting room floor, that's probably the first place fans want to look. It's also worth remembering the film's supporting cast, including Sandra Huller, Lionel Boyce, Ken Leung, and Milana Vaintrub, who play members of Grace's crew. Some of their material likely got trimmed too, especially anything tied to backstory that the theatrical cut only gestures at. A 400-page novel has room for extended flashback material that a 2-hour, 36-minute film simply doesn't. Here's the bigger picture, and this is where I think the story earns some real analysis instead of just repeating a press release. Physical media has been treated like a dying format for years. Streaming numbers dominate the conversation, and most studios have quietly scaled back disc production. But Project Hail Mary's home release is a pretty clear signal that physical editions still have a job to do, and that job is context. Streaming gives you the finished product. A disc, especially one loaded with commentary and deleted material, gives you the decision-making behind the product. For a film that reportedly shot double what it needed, that's not a minor bonus feature. That's a genuine window into how a nearly 500-page internal monologue became a coherent 2.5-hour film. Collectors aren't just buying a shinier copy of the movie. They're buying the parts of the process that streaming platforms have no incentive to preserve. There's also a timing angle worth mentioning. The Steelbook 3-disc gift set follows on October 13th, with additional bonus content beyond the standard release. That's a fairly standard staggered release strategy, but it also means the 5 deleted scenes on the August release aren't necessarily the full extent of what eventually surfaces. If there's really 30 minutes of cut footage floating around, a 3-disc collector's edition is a logical place for more of it to show up later. Let's talk numbers, because they explain why any of this bonus content matters commercially. Project Hail Mary opened in March on an $80 million domestic weekend, which was, at the time, the biggest opening of the year and the largest in Amazon MGM's history. It held audiences with unusually small week-to-week drops for a film without any existing franchise or sequel number attached to the title. By the time its theatrical run wound down, the film had crossed roughly $680 million worldwide against a $200 million budget, finishing as 2020's success' third highest-grossing film, behind only Michael and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. It also passed The Martian, Andy Weir's previous adaptation, to become the highest-grossing film based on his work. That performance is exactly why a home release with genuine bonus content makes sense as a business decision. A film that made this much money and built this much goodwill has an audience that's primed to buy a physical copy, not just for the movie itself, but for everything around it. And there's a longer-term angle, too. Reports have circulated that Andy Weir has been discussing ideas for a follow-up. Nothing confirmed, nothing official, but a box office result this strong tends to accelerate those conversations quietly behind the scenes of So here's where that leaves us. A film that started as an internal, introspective 496-page novel became a 5-hour rough cut, then a 2-hour, 36-minute theatrical release, and now, on August 11th, a small piece of everything in between gets to see daylight. 5 deleted scenes isn't the full picture. It's a sample. But for a film built almost entirely on one man's isolated thought process being translated into something we could actually watch together in a theater, even a small sample of what got left behind is worth paying attention to. If a follow-up ever gets confirmed, this disc release might end up being the first real breadcrumb pointing toward it. Either way, August 11th is now a date worth marking if you've been holding out on picking this one up. That's the story. If you want more breakdowns like this the moment new film news drops, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.